Good morning one more time, Landing Place Church. It's so good to have you here. For those of you here live, those of you joining us online on the podcast, we're launching a brand new series today. It is episode 1 of a 4-part series called Unsatisfied. Question I want to ask you today is, are you satisfied? Are you satisfied? I just had a conversation recently with a young lady who graduated from college last year. She's in the medical field, and this has really worked out well for her. She can work as much as she wants and basically earn as much money as she wants as a 22-year-old. She's been going to work, making money. She's got a boyfriend. She's got a dog. I mean, really, what else would you want, right? So we're in this conversation, and she asked a really interesting question. She said, "Is this it?" What do you mean? She was like, "Is this it? For the last 9 months, I've been getting up, going to work, coming home, feeding the dog, seeing my boyfriend, getting back up, going to work, feeding the dog, seeing my..." It's like, is this adulting? I wanted to say, pretty much. But I've learned not to say everything that I think. And I kind of find it interesting that a 22-year-old who's been in this game for probably about 9 months or so, maybe not even that long, has come to the conclusion I thought there would be more. I thought this would be more satisfying. I went to school, I studied hard, I got a good job. I've done all the things you're supposed to do as a young adult, but I feel like there's something missing. I feel like I'm just not satisfied. I thought, wow, you are such an overachiever. You have managed to get to a midlife crisis at 22. You're like 20 years ahead, because I think she's not the only one. I think there's a lot of us who are asking maybe the same question. We get to a point in time in our life where we ask the question, why am I here? Not here at Landing Place Church, 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Why am I here? What is the purpose? Is it really just to go to school and maybe go either get a job or go into the military? Is it just to find someone to be with? Is it maybe to have kids? Is it maybe to buy a house and then what? Work 30 or 40 years and then die? Is that it? Is this all? It's a very existential question. But I think probably at one point in time, it's a question that pretty much every person in every culture throughout all of history has asked themselves and say, why exactly am I here? So today, we start a journey to discover the meaning of life. I feel like 4 weeks is enough time, don't you? We're actually going to dig into a book. We're going to start a book study this week, brand new series. It's a book that you may not have studied. It's a book that you may not have read. It's one of many, 66 actually, books in this collection of books we call the Bible. It's a book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is a strange book. It's a confusing book. It's kind of a bizarre book. And therefore, it sort of gets overlooked, but it's a book that God felt was important to put in this collection of books called the Bible. It's part of what we call wisdom literature. The Bible has several different types of literature. It has poetic, it has historic, it has prophetic, it has stories. This falls into a little bit of a narrow category called wisdom literature, which is basically Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and Proverbs. Now, normally, if we were going to seek wisdom from somebody, we would want to find somebody who's lived life and who's looking back on their life and sharing what they've learned. Pretty wise thing to do, right? We've identified such a guy, but this is an interesting book because he doesn't share what works. He actually shares what doesn't work. In fact, the entire book could be titled, What Doesn't Work in Life? Now, normally when we pick up the Bible, we look for what I would call prescriptive things. If you go to a doctor and you're sick, he or she will write a prescription and you go get that filled. This is going to make you better. A lot of times when we pick up God's word, we think, this is going to be prescriptive. I'm going to open it up and do what it says. This is why Ecclesiastes is so important. When you pick up and you read the book of Ecclesiastes, don't do what it says. Not everything in the Bible is prescriptive. Some of it's given so that we can learn what not to do. It's one of those books. So, it's an interesting book because it's told from two different perspectives. There's two different voices in this book. Really, we're entering the next 4 weeks in a deep Bible study. And it's so easy to take a verse out of context. We're going to go deep in context, and today we're really going to talk about what does the book mean, why is it here, and what do we need to know about it? Because once you understand that, the book is fairly easy to understand. If we don't get that, the book is very hard to understand. So we're going to spend a lot of time today just setting background. Is that okay? I'm going to do it either way, so you might as well just say yes. All right? Just be really super honest with you. All right, so there's a narrator in this book who sets up the book and actually tears down the book, who actually is sort of a person outside of the author who's going to kind of frame the book. And then there's the actual author himself. So the narrator starts this book off. Ecclesiastes verse 1 says this. These are the words of the teacher, David's son, who ruled in Jerusalem. All right, the narrator speaking. He is basically doing an introduction of the speaker. He's saying, hey, here's who's going to speak in this book. It's going to be the teacher. Now, the word Ecclesiastes is a late Latin, early Greek word, which is a translation of a Hebrew word that is this, kohelet, or kohelet. Or if you're a little Hebrew, you say kohelet. All right? Cold and flu season is a wonderful time to learn to speak Hebrew because you already got a little phlegm deep down inside of there. And so, kohelet. Everybody say it with me, kohelet. Good. Kohelet actually means one who gathers to teach or to preach. Today, I would be a kohelet in Hebrew. I would be somebody who's gathering people to teach or to preach. First thing we need to know. This word comes up over and over again. So who's the author of this book? Well, that's not as clear-cut as you may think. Most experts really truly believe it is Solomon who wrote the Song of Solomon, who wrote Proverbs. Solomon was well-versed in wisdom literature, and he happened to be the King David's son, so he'd be directly in answer to that, and he ruled in Jerusalem. Most experts really believe Solomon wrote this book, and it's going to make sense in so many ways. There are a couple things throughout the book, because the book doesn't identify who the speaker is. There's a couple things that don't quite line up with Solomon, but when you look at it as a totality, as a whole, it looks like Solomon's our guy, and that's going to be important because we're going to make the assumption for this series that Solomon is indeed the author. So who's Solomon? Because this is important in the book. Solomon is King David's son. Now, you may remember King David if you've been around church at all. King David had a little illicit affair with a woman named Bathsheba. That didn't turn out so well. She ended up getting pregnant. David murdered her husband, and they ended up having this son together that probably just was not God's plan. That baby died, and they were both in huge mourning that they'd lost this baby. David and Bathsheba had another child, and his name was Solomon. As Solomon was growing up in David's household, he had God's favor, and he eventually took over all the nation of Israel as king and ruler. One day, God was so pleased with Solomon that he came to him and said, Solomon, I'm going to give you anything you want. One wish, like a genie in the bottle type thing, one wish. What would you like? I'll give you anything. Now, I want you to ask yourself that question for just a minute. God comes to you this afternoon and goes, I will give you anything you want. Anything. What would you ask for? Solomon said, you know what? I'm leading a bunch of people right now. I am leading an entire nation. I've had no leadership training other than watching my dad. What I would really love is some wisdom. God goes, oh, that is such a good choice. Solomon, because you've asked for wisdom and you didn't ask for riches, you didn't ask for opulent living, you didn't ask for the death of your enemies, because you didn't ask for any of that, I'm not only going to give you wisdom, you're going to be the wisest man who's ever walked the planet of the earth until Jesus comes. But I'm also going to give you everything you didn't ask for. I'm going to give you riches. I'm going to give you power. I'm going to give you fame. I'm pretty much going to give you anything your heart could desire. Pretty sweet gig, huh? And Solomon lived like no one else. He attained all of those things. He was truly what we would consider today to be a superhero. He could do things nobody else could do. He knew things nobody else could do. He could build things nobody else could build. He was truly superhuman because he was endowed by God with superhuman powers. But how many know that every superhero has a fatal flaw, do they not? What's Superman have? Kryptonite, right? Solomon had kryptonite too. Anybody know what Solomon's kryptonite was? Women. Solomon loved women. I swear he loved all women. And because he could spare himself no expense, because Solomon could do whatever he wanted, he had a lot of women. Gentlemen, can I speak to just guys for a minute? Sometimes it's complicated to have one wife, isn't it? Let's just be honest, right? We love them, but it can be complicated. Women, I realize, we're equally complicated. Solomon had over 1,000 wives. That's a lot of estrogen. That's a lot of words and a lot of emotion. Solomon married over 1,000 women. He spared himself absolutely. Like, if he saw somebody he liked, he just married her. Now, there were two issues with God with that. Number one, God said, in an ideal world, I've set marriage up to be between one man and one woman. That's the first thing. The second thing is, God was constantly warning believers not to marry unbelievers. Like throughout history, if you look through the Old Testament. When you go into the promised land, whatever you do not marry their women. Why? Because they worship other gods. And if you marry them, I almost promise you, you think you're going to pull them to your side and toward me, but I will almost promise you they will pull you away from me to worship other gods. That's exactly what happened with Solomon. As he married these wives, and as his life went on, this charmed life, this amazing life, this wonderful life, he got pulled away from God. So here he is at the end of his life, pulled away from God by all these women. And what Ecclesiastes is, it's sort of the ramblings of a grumpy old man. It's a man looking back at his life who had everything at one moment and who could do anything he wanted, but nothing brought him satisfaction. All right? That's the setup for the book. So, the opening statement by Solomon is really fascinating. It's only 2 verses. It's not very many words. But it really sets the tone for the entire book. And now that we have a little bit of understanding of the book, okay, I'm going to expect this book to be somebody who's very cynical, somebody who's very angry, somebody who's not happy, somebody who's very unsatisfied. That's the tone of the book. Again, not prescriptive. Don't be like this. But how do you get there? How do we avoid getting there? Meaning of life. Let's jump in. Solomon. Verses 2 and 3. Solomon speaking. Everything is meaningless, said the teacher. Completely meaningless. What do we get for all our hard work under the sun? Doesn't seem that profound, but I will tell you that this opening statement has 3 words, 3 phrases that are repeated throughout this book over and over and over again. We're going to take a deep look at them because it frames the entire rest of the book. If we don't get these 2 verses, we miss the entire meaning of the book, which is why it's so confusing. Once you understand these 2 verses, you get the entire book. The first word is meaningless. It's translated into different translations, vanity. It's the Hebrew word hevel, or hevel. Everybody give me a hevel. Hevel. Hevel means smoke or vapor. Hevel means smoke or vapor. There's 2 aspects of hevel. Number 1, it's fleeting. It's temporary, like smoke. But the second meaning is it's somewhat of an enigma. It looks solid, but when you go to grab it, there's nothing there. Solomon said, life is hevel. Life is meaningless. There's no point. You go to grab something. You think it's going to be good. You think it's going to give you satisfaction. You reach in. It's not there. It's smoke. It's vapor. It's, say it with me, hevel. We're going to use that word a lot. You know why? Because Solomon uses this word 32 times throughout this book. Everything is hevel. Second thing we need to understand is the next word. It's the word get. What does a man get? What does a man profit? It's the Hebrew word yitron. And it means, what do I profit? What do I gain? What is the advantage of working hard? I work hard all my life. To what end? I end up dying. Somebody else gets my stuff. Why am I killing myself working so hard? It's not a bad question. He uses this word 10 times, over and over and over again. What does it profit a man? How many of you ever owned a hamster? Did you ever own a hamster? I had a hamster as a kid. This is what a hamster does. This is really the only thing a hamster does. He doesn't work. He doesn't really do anything. He just pretty much runs. And I think if Solomon were going to give a word picture in our day, he might go, life is like we're hamsters. We run on this wheel, and we run really fast, and we run really hard, but you know what? We're not going anywhere. We don't end up anywhere. Where does it get us? Nowhere. We're in the same cage as we started. And we're going to die in the same cage that we started. You know what he says? It's hevel. It's hevel. Third word we need to grab a hold of. And this is probably, I would think, other than meaningless, the second most important phrase. Under the sun. Under the sun. This is a long Hebrew phrase. Tahat hasames. I won't even have you say it. But I will tell you this. It means from a worldly perspective, or a life apart from God. Life is meaningless, completely meaningless. What do we get? What do we profit for all of our hard work under the sun in a life apart from God? If I only had one book to talk to an atheist about, it would be Ecclesiastes. Because Ecclesiastes is really written from a standpoint of a man who one time fully embraced God, but slowly got pulled away from God. And I wouldn't really call Solomon an atheist at the end of his life. I would probably call him more agnostic, which basically means, there might be a God, but I don't think he cares about me. There might be a God, but I don't think he's really interested in what I'm doing. There might be a God, but I don't know how that impacts me anymore. But if you really wanted to talk to an atheist about life in general, Ecclesiastes is a wonderful book because it tells you that you can pursue everything you want under the sun, but you're going to find it to be meaningless. That a life apart from God is truly hevel. It's meaningless. So, purpose of the book. Why does this book exist? Why are we going to spend 4 weeks on it? We are going to let the teacher, the preacher, the kohelet, we're going to let him deconstruct, tear down all of the ways that we try to find meaning, all of the ways we try to find purpose apart from God. Now, I know you're sitting in church, which for the vast majority of us means this isn't me. I'm not apart from God. Maybe my neighbor is, my coworker is, maybe somebody in my family is, but man, I'm not there. I believe that, but I also know that we spend a lot of time chasing things under the sun that are meaningless and that don't result in profit. This week we're going to unpack some of those things as Solomon jumps in. So, let's get into some of the text. Once again, this is a man who's cynical. It's a man who's angry. It's a man who's just not happy with life. Okay? Life is meaningless, Solomon said. I'll give you 3 reasons why. First of all, nothing changes. Nothing ever changes. He says this, generations come and generations go, but the earth never changes. So the sun rises and then the sun sets, and then it hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south and the wind turns north. Around and around it goes, blowing in circles. Rivers run into the sea, but the sea's never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows out to the sea again. Everything is wearisome beyond description. Solomon goes, look, our lives just don't matter. Out my kitchen window, which faces this way, about a mile down the road, when I stand at my kitchen window, I can see Long's Peak. Anybody ever climb Long's Peak in here? I know we have some climbers. All right, yeah, a few of you. Yeah. When I look out at Long's Peak, it kind of is amazing to me because it's sort of the highest mountain here in Colorado on this side, on the north side. And I would imagine that Long's Peak looked exactly like this probably in Solomon's day and will probably look like this 3,000 years from now. He's right in that sense. Long's Peak really hasn't changed. Sometimes there's snow on it, sometimes there's not snow on it, but that happens every year cyclically. At the end of the day, my life comes and goes, and it really doesn't affect Long's Peak in any way. A few years ago, I went to the Grand Canyon with my kids. My son actually got engaged right in at the rim of the Grand Canyon. It was kind of a cool thing, and so they wanted to take us back and reenact a little bit that thing. And so we saw the Grand Canyon, and Karen and I had been to the Grand Canyon about 30 years ago, and guess what? Looked exactly the same. Yep, big hole in the ground, still there. Yeah, it looks just like it did 30 years ago. I didn't say that because I've learned. You don't have to say everything you think. But I think in Solomon's day, the Grand Canyon probably looked a lot like this, and guess what? I think 3,000 years now, Grand Canyon is going to look strikingly similar to this. Pacific Ocean. I've had an opportunity to stand at the Pacific Ocean and watch the ocean come in, and the truth is, the Pacific Ocean looks like it did thousands of years ago and looks like it will thousands of years. My life has no bearing on these things, and that's what Solomon was saying. The earth doesn't change. Oh yes, we got climate change. That's not what he's talking about. He's saying my life really doesn't impact any of these things. My existence doesn't change any of these things. And for that, he goes, you know what? It's just hell. It's just smoke, it's vapor, it's mist. I'm here and I'm gone. Nothing changes. How discouraging is that? The second thing is, he says, we're never satisfied. We're never, ever satisfied. He goes on to say this, no matter how much we see, we're never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we're not content. Now, if there was anybody who had an opportunity to see things and hear things that no one else had, it's Solomon. Solomon could afford to see anything he wanted to see. He could see the wonders of the world that existed at that time. He could travel. He could do anything he wanted. He had unlimited resources. He could hear anything he wanted to. He could bring the Trans-Siberian Orchestra in for a Christmas concert if he wanted to. He could bring in pentatonics. He could bring in Taylor Swift. He could bring in anybody. There was nobody in his day that he couldn't have brought into the palace because he just wanted to hear them. But he said, you know what? We're never satisfied. You notice that? You go to a concert, it was really good. But you want to go back and hear another one, right? Because we're never really satisfied. So I want you to put yourself in a position for just a minute. The lottery has gotten up to $1 billion a couple of times here in the last few years. Let's say you win the lottery, but you don't win a $1 billion lottery. You win a $5 billion lottery after tax. Yeah, it changes everything, right? What that really means is, at this stage, you have been given enough money to do anything you want. There's nothing out of your reach. You can afford anything. You can afford any experience. You can afford to go anywhere. You can afford to do anything. There's nothing you can't physically purchase that's purchasable. What would you do? How would you invest your money? How would you spend your money? For some of you may say, you know what, and this would be me, I'm getting me a private jet. I am never flying on commercial airlines again. I'm never going through TSA again. I'm gonna have my own airport. I'm not even going to DIA. I'm just gonna have an airport out the back of my house. I'm gonna walk out, hop on that plane, have somebody else fly it anytime I feel like it, at my disposal. If I feel like seafood, we're going to New Orleans tonight. If you like lobster, we're flying to Maine this afternoon. That's just me, right? If money was no object, right? For some of you, you might want to say, you know what, I got some exotic locations. I would love a little hut on Tahiti, and I would just love to be out in front of the water and just spend some time there and soak it up. Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, for some of you, it would. For some of you, you go, you know what? I would build the biggest mansion. I would have a chef. I would have a butler. I would have a maid. I would never clean again. I would have a pool. I would have a garden. I would just live like that. And for some of you, and this would be, I'm at the ends, I'm the plain, and this one over here, we're going to eat great food. We're going to have the best food, best wine, I don't want to ever put anything in my mouth again that I don't think tastes phenomenal. I'm never eating anything just because it's healthy again, right? Ever. You can take all those things away. Steady stream of bacon. Well, really, what else is there right there? This is where Solomon was. I want you to put yourself there because this was his life right here. Like he could do anything he wanted to. But he said, you know what? I've done it all. It's not that satisfying. I thought it would be better. Is this it? Last one, he says this. History repeats itself. History merely repeats itself. He says it's all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. I want you to catch that line again. Nothing under the sun. Nothing apart from God. Nothing solely of this world is truly new. It's an important phrase. Sometimes people say, hey, here's something new, but it's actually old. You know what? Because nothing is truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past. And guess what? In future generations, no one's going to remember what we're doing right now either. Whew. This is an unhappy man. This is a man who's really wrestling with his own identity. He's wrestling with his meaning in life. Now, if anybody had something new in his life, it was Solomon. Solomon built things that no one else had ever built. Solomon did things that no one else had ever done. Solomon had more wisdom than anyone who'd ever been alive. People would come and sit at his feet just to hear him talk about something. He was that smart. And yet, here's a guy that said, you know what? There's nothing new under the sun. It's all been done before. It's all been, now we would argue, that was great for you, Solomon, but man, there's a lot of things new now. We got computers. We got the internet. We got iPhones. We got artificial intelligence. There's tons of things that are new. And I think Solomon would say, is it really new? Because it still seems like you're asking the exact same questions I'm asking. Why am I here? What's the meaning of life? What's my purpose? I don't know that things are new at all. We forget what happened in past generations, and no one's going to remember us in future generations. It's all Hevel. Well, that's pretty depressing. So, over the next 3 weeks, Solomon is going to drill down into 3 areas. He said, look, I'm incredibly well qualified to run a study. He didn't say this, but this is true. I'm smarter than anybody. God has given me more wisdom. I have more resources, and I have power. I can basically do anything I want. And so I'm going to focus my efforts on 3 different areas to try to find satisfaction. And over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look at these 3 areas, and this is more than history. This is more than the past, because I think these are things that we have a tendency to try to find satisfaction in today. First is this. He said, I'm going to pursue wisdom. I'm going to pursue knowledge. I'm going to get more degrees than anybody else. I'm going to become more learned. I am going to immerse myself so that I know things that other people don't know. I'm going to see if I can find happiness there. That's next week. Week 3, he said, you know what? Maybe it's not about wisdom. Maybe it's about pleasure. I'm going to indulge myself in every possible vacation, pleasure, food, drink, anything I want. I'm going to dig in to see if I can find some meaning there. When he gets done with that quest, he said, I'm going to go on and I'm going to put my time and energy into work. I'm going to produce things. I'm going to create things. I'm going to build things. I'm going to build legacies to myself, to God, to everybody. I'm going to spend all of my time pursuing meaning in work. And then And we're going to come to the conclusion and find out. Did you find it, Solomon? Did you find what you were looking for? Did you really find what you were looking for? Did you find that satisfaction you so desperately wanted? There's nothing wrong with any of these things. Nothing wrong with pursuing knowledge and wisdom. There's certainly nothing wrong with pursuing some pleasure. And there's nothing wrong with pursuing work. We just need to understand that we'll never find our satisfaction in life in any of these things. So we're going to learn over the next few weeks, and then we're going to learn, well, then where do we find our satisfaction? You're going to have to come back to find out that. Because today we're not going to discover the meaning of life. We're just going to discover what it's not. So as we close, I want you to ask a couple questions to you today so we get the wheels turning in this series. First question is this. What are you chasing after today? Try to find satisfaction. What are you chasing after? Are you chasing after maybe some knowledge, some more education, learning more things? Again, not a bad thing. Maybe you're chasing after pleasure right now. I just want to have some fun. Maybe you're chasing after work. As Americans, man, we love to put a lot of time and energy and effort into work. What are you chasing after to try to find satisfaction today? Second question is this. What do you believe God wants you to chase after? We ended our last series on prayer and fasting. Today's the last day, asking what changes does God want to bring into my life this year? I know what changes I want in 2023, but what does God want to change? And I think this series is going to just come in on the back end of this and ask the question, what does God want me to be chasing after this year? And what will really bring the satisfaction that I'm looking for? Let me close this up in prayer. We'll continue this next week. God, we thank you for Solomon. We thank you for your word. We thank you for this book of Ecclesiastes that you put in the Bible. God, I know it's a hard book. It's a complicated book. It's a book that seems like it's the opposite of what we expect to find in your word, and yet I know that you've included it in here so that we can learn something. And my prayer is that as we take this journey together, as we discover the meaning that you have for us, God, I pray that you would just speak clearly to us what's really important. God, we love you and we thank you. And we just pray that you'll speak to us, that we might chase after the things that you would have us chase after. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.